What's up, duelists? Top 8 deck lists. Everybody loves the top 8 deck list. This video is going to be a 1 of 10. You guys are super excited. And I know a lot of you guys are going to have opinions in the comment section, and that makes me happy. I want to hear your opinions. Anyway, if you want to play in a tournament like this one that just happened last weekend, we got another one coming up this month, March 23rd, actually, in a couple of weeks. So copy these deck lists, get your practice in, etc., etc. If you want to earn your invite, 2 opportunities this month, making up a little bit for lost time. It's going to be a banger event. It takes place in a really big Yu-Gi-Oh! Discord. You can join that in the description below. Plus, we have a bunch of IRL ones coming up. More info on those soon. You should be able to find the RBET New York signups in the description below as well if you want to participate in that. That's going to be an IRL Edison tournament. It's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome. The prizes are amazing. Anyway, let's get into the top 8 decks. We got 8th place or 5th through 8th place Roundhook. This was one of the coolest decks from the top 8. One of the more innovative ones. This is Roundhook's Frog Plant deck. Main decking triple Light of Darkness Dragon and Titanial. So, 4 2 tribute monsters. Very difficult to support 2 tribute monsters without stuff like Dandelion, Enemy Controller. So he's maxing out on all of the legal copies of those. He's got some cool tech like Cyber Valley as well as Karma Cut. Ton of discard traps. I actually love this list because if he just sets a discard trap turn 1, you end phase, discard maybe a Dandelion or a Treeborn Frog, and then you're off to the races. You can either tribute summon Lad and then have intentions to bring back your Dandelion to continue Lad looping, or you can, tribute summon like Monarch or, set up your substitute plays or whatever. I really like this list. I think the 2 Swap Frogs is a nice innovation. I think that that's something that we haven't talked about enough. I've definitely played with it a little bit on the channel. Just because there is only a density of frogs that you really want to draw. So in any given game, like I think if you're playing more than 10 frogs, you can count on drawing like too many frogs. And that's just not something that you really, really want because the frogs often, particularly Swap Frog, operate at a disadvantage, especially when trying to support multiple tribute summons. So yeah, very interesting main deck list. I love the Gore's inclusion, providing 2 bodies, making sure you could double tribute for Lad, and then giving you a big dude in the graveyard to bring back when your Lad dies. The sideboard is very straightforward, just triple Crow, triple Vanities. So he says, I don't want to deal with any unfair stuff. Crow is very good versus zombies. It's very good versus Value Turbo. Those are 2 of the more popular matchups right now. Crow can also help you versus random other stuff like Dragon Turbo. Once again, a very difficult matchup, but we saw Roundhook take down Dragon Turbo in order to make it to top 8 thanks to the Light and Darkness Dragon. Being able to negate those draw spells, being able to negate those unfair setups from those types of decks really went the extra distance. It's interesting because Light and Darkness Dragon is actively kind of bad versus Value Turbo, which is currently the most popular deck in Edison format. So it's really interesting that he's able to make it work in such a large capacity. Unfortunately for him, when he did make it to top 8, it did cost him. He had a couple of Light and Darkness Dragons, and had he had just a Monarch or something instead in the Value Turbo matchup, might have gone a little bit different. So, interesting. Food for thought for sure. Definitely the 2 tribute monsters, they have their upsides and they have their downsides. There is a natural weakness to the most popular deck in the metagame, but maybe Roundhook said, oh, people are going to adapt. People are not going to play the most popular deck, but I feel like in order for people to stop playing the most popular deck, you got to respond to it first. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, congratulations to Roundhook, earning his invite, one of the top frog players out there. Next deck in top 8 is OG99. Oh, that's the first place list. Spoiler alert. All right, next deck in top 8 is GVO. Oh, shit. We got Black Wings. This one is pretty straightforward. He's got some interesting choices. No Solemn Judgment in the main, as well as no Torrential Tribute in the main. So just not playing Solemn Judgment at all, which is very interesting. He elected to go with double Book of Moon, compulsory, Dust Shoot, and double Legacy instead of Solemn Judgment. Very unique choice. I think that cutting those cards makes you better in the mirror. It makes you better in aggro mirrors because you're not paying that 4,000 life points. But a little bit difficult to set up multiple cards. So he's looking to use the Legacies, the Trap Dust Shoot, and maybe the compulsory as chainables to bait Heavy Storm. And then once he's baited the Heavy Storm, he can continue from there to set multiples. Usually in 13 trap decks, you want to have access to Solemn Judgment to kind of have those shutout draws, but chainables is another way to make it so Heavy Storm doesn't sting as bad, and I kind of like that concept. I think it's not too bad. Solemn Judgment oftentimes, in particularly the Blackwing Mirror, ends up being a 4,000 life point trap hole. Yes, sometimes it can negate an Icarus attack, and that can be game winning. But usually, the majority of the time, it's a 4,000 life point trap hole, which is just not really where you want to be when you're playing aggro mirrors. So, makes sense from GBO. Extra deck, straightforward, nothing to say about it. Sideboard is all of the good stuff with some of the tech choices. Nobleman, Mind Control. I love siding Mind Control in this deck. I actually like maining it. I honestly would have mained it over a book here, but it's all the same, you know? Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything worth saying about this. Nope. All right, next deck. Congratulations to GBO. You guys might have recently watched his tournament run with Flamvell here on the channel. Very strong player. He did exceptionally well. I believe his only loss in Swiss was to himself once again getting hungry and going to get a snack and just taking a round loss. So, very impressive run from GBO. All right, next. Tim Pontes. Tim Pontes topped with the Frog Hero deck list. Very unique deck list. Now, Tim is a strong player. He's been playing this deck pretty religiously for the last like 6 to 10 months. You guys have probably seen him on the channel. If you guys watch the 8-man videos, he's constantly practicing, constantly grinding, and it definitely paid off for him in this tournament, earning his invite. He's got the Frog Heroes. A lot of interesting decisions here. He's got Junk Synchron, he's got Alias and Ocean, as well as E-Call. He only has one Battle Fader and Gores as ways to stop Battle Phase, not playing Mirror Force in the main as well. So very light on the defense, but it ended up working out pretty well for him. Triple upstarts to make sure he starts with both the heroes and the frogs. Once again, I think this deck list looks incredibly consistent, about as consistent as you could make it. The only thing is like, oftentimes with the Frog Hero deck that I think is kind of a weakness, that I think makes it difficult to play this deck into the specifically Vayu Turbo matchup, is that you have a low density of Monarchs. And Monarchs are really like the key cards in the Vayu Turbo matchup. And so I'm not really sure if that mattered for him that much in this tournament. I don't really remember who he played in top 8 or top 4 or whatever. But if he had had more Monarchs, possibly could it have been the deciding factor? Who knows? I think in this metagame, more Monarchs is probably a good thing, though. Possibly something over, I don't know, Unifrog in the main, or something over one of the Elemental heroes, or maybe something over the Junk Synchron even though Junk Synchron's really good. That's a tricky one. I think I would just want to play a higher density of Monarchs if possible. Possibly even over Upstart Goblin. Who knows? But yeah, good stuff. Congratulations to Tim. Sideboard strategy, very interesting. He's got super polymerization for the heroes. Very interesting. Double Vanities, not going for the full 3, but quite similar to Raunix side as well. Looks like the Frog players are really high on triple DD Crow as well as multiple copies of Vanity's Fiend. Makes sense, those are the most powerful cards in the archetype against the meta right now. Alright, next deck list, we got Twilight Trappin, who played Blackwings. Very similar to GBO's deck list, but electing to play Solemn Judgment. Wait, did GBO not play Royal Oppression? He didn't play Royal Oppression. Wow, he sided it. I just noticed that. I was like, wait, that was missing from GBO's list. Anyway, yeah, he's got the Royal Oppression and the Solemn Judgment, but no Mirror Force. So an interesting decision to cut there. No Book of Moon as well. So cutting on the Summon Stops. Very different, very contrasting to GBO's deck list. You'll notice those 4 to 5 deck slots that like change a little bit in Blackwings. 2 Dust Tornadoes in the main as well. Just really wanted to hate out the back row if possible. Double Vayu, both players on double Vayu. I think those 2 to 5 deck slots, in this instance, the Oppression, the Solemn, the double Dust Tornadoes, and then the double Legacy and stuff, they really make a huge difference in how you play the matches with Blackwings. Like, the core of the monsters is going to play kind of similarly, but like the way you navigate your interaction and your back row, like how you use your back row and stuff, really depends on those tech slots. So very interesting changes. In the sideboard, he's got the Grand Mole for the Vayu Turbo matchup. Card cleans house. Double Knock, but no Mind Control. Definitely consider Mind Control over the second Knock. While Knock does banish things like Pyramid Turtle and Goblin Zombie a little bit more effectively, Mind Control is just a stronger card, and it can remove something, so you can go for game, or you can make a synchro play. It just has a lot more versatility in the format than Double Knock, so maybe consider a Mind Control over the Knock. The second Knock moving forward. My Body's a Shield, way to play through Bottomless, Torrential, that type of stuff. Icarus Attack as well. Soul Release for the Lightsworn and the Frogs. That put in a lot of work. We saw a lot of Soul Releases this weekend because we saw a lot of Frogs this weekend. It was one of the most played decks in the tournament. I'll be getting info on that shortly once we've processed all that data, but just from a glance at all of it, it looks like Frogs was like one of the most played decks. Double deck dev, one Fossil Dyna, one DD Crow, interesting little mix mash of dudes, two Cyber Dragons, classic. Moving on, Televisual's top 4 Diva Hero deck list with Gravekeeper Spy in the main. Now Televisual, he's a chill dude. You know, he's a gamer. He's out here grinding. And this deck list it cooks. I'm going to be honest. I've played Gravekeeper Spy and Diva Hero on the channel before. I have found it to be very powerful, not only as a way to protect you against the Blackwing matchup, which can be a little bit difficult, but also as a way to facilitate Dark Arm Dragon in a deck that otherwise struggles to. It just gives you 2 darks for 1 card. It lets you pop back rows. It lets you deal with problem threats. It lets you pivot nicely into Caius. It's just a solid opener in a deck that doesn't really have too many of those besides Stratos. So I think it's an interesting tech choice, and it worked out really well for Televisual, putting him all the way to top 4. I think where Gravekeeper Spy struggles is it introduces the flip paradigm into a deck that doesn't want it, I guess, in a deck that like kind of already was going beyond it. But that's fine. I think that's interesting. It helps you in the Hero and the Blackwing matchup. Maybe a little bit more useful for past metas, but useful enough to get Televisual to top 8. One thing that I did find very annoying about playing Gravekeeper Spy in Diva Hero is the weakness of Diva Hero is the number of garnets or inactive draws that you have, including Gilman, Double Mally, and Descendant. So you're just introducing a 4th garnet in a deck that already really hates to draw its garnets, which can be very frustrating. But Gravekeeper Spy is one of the most powerful cards in the format, honestly, bar none, and it hasn't really found a home. So it is cool to see it in this strategy as like having that sort of home that I think it's really missed. Very strong card. It's one of the best cards versus Blackwings and Hero Beat. So while those decks are waning in popularity, they are still popular, and so it is interesting to see this kind of propel this deck. It also works nicely with the double Gold Sarks. He'll Gold Sark for something, set a Spy. Your opponent gets a little bit antsy, they'll start attacking. Every time you activate Gold Sark, I've noticed in Edison format, people just like want to get really aggressive before you get your Gold Sark card. So they'll just start swinging like crazy, and you know what? Spy's perfect when your opponent wants to start swinging, so good stuff. Double Wind Blast, I feel like that's optimal. Actually, I think 2 to 3 Wind Blast is optimal. Just having the maximum number of ways to pitch your dead Mallies or your dead Descendants or whatever, set up your grave, and kill Royal Oppression in the main deck seem very crucial. I think with 2 Gold Sarks, Storm, Space Typhoon, double Wind Blast, and Solemn Judgment, you have plenty of oppression outs, and I think that that's something that this deck definitely needs because of how weak it is to Royal Oppression. Like Deep Sea Diva, Malicious, Dark Armed, Evil Guy, Miracle Fusion, Plague, Future Fusion, Return. The majority of your deck that does anything gets hurt by Royal Oppression, so you just need to have a high density of outs to it, whether it's like Dust Tornadoes or Phoenix Wings. I prefer Phoenix Wing personally because you can also out stuff like Machina Fortress or Grand Mole or annoying threats that are non-back row, so that's pretty important. Sideboard looks pretty straightforward, just a bunch of 1-ofs you can Gold Sark for. This is kind of the Jake XO strat where you're just like, alright, I have 3 copies of any Silver Bullet in my sideboard because I am playing Gold Sark, so I like it a lot. Some of these cards, like Mask of Restrict, playing only one of them is a little silly. Plus, Mask of Restrict in this deck makes very little sense to me personally. Not only does it shut off your Descendant and your Caiuses, but it also shuts off Stardust Dragon if you make it, so you don't really have a very effective way of protecting it. So it doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense in this style of deck, but if you do flip it versus Frogs, it can sometimes just win you the game, and I think that there's merit to gambling, so there you go. Lightning Vortex, great one to search off Gold Sark. Fossil Dyna, of course. Sirocco, always a powerhouse in the Blackwing style matchups. Really solid deck. Congrats to Televisual. Really cool stuff. Definitely cooked. Next up is Oddity. Oddity went undefeated in Swiss with this Instant Zombies deck list. I don't remember if he was in top 8 or top 4. I got these mixed up, obviously. Clearly, I am not on top of my game, but your boys had a busy weekend, all right? You guys, Dune 2 came out, all right? And as you can tell, this deck is clearly Dune coded if you think about it. Zombie Master played by Timothy Chalamet, if you think about it. Anyway, yeah, this is Instant Zombies. We've seen this deck before. We've seen it have a lot of success. He's just playing a crazy trap lineup, one of everything. He's like, fuck it. One of these is going to be good. I don't know. One of them is going to be dead, but at least it's only one of them, right? So that's pretty hype. The one of trap lineup, I think, is slept on for sure. He's got the stock triple psychic lineup. He's got the E-Tel. He's got the instant fusion to bring out the Reaper or the Musician King to go into Arcanite. Looks like he's made room for the Life Transfer and the Arcanite. So he's had to eat into something. I think Mistworm got cut here. Something else got cut here. I'm not even sure, but he's made room for both, which is based, because I do think Life Transfer is pretty crucial to this strategy. Not only does it give you Grave Control for your Dark Arm, but it can set up your return and gain you crucial life points, so you can't get reversal that easily. The sideboard is where things get cursed. He's got triple creature swap in the sideboard. My brother, creature swap, really? You had to do this to me. You had to put creature swap in my video. Oh my gosh, I am suffering. Please, Oddity, why would you do your boy like this? Nah, creature swap makes sense in this deck. You got like 5-ish things that are good to give your opponent. Alright, it doesn't make sense in this deck, but it's kind of a fun card, and maybe he just wanted to cheese. And then he's got triple vanities, which makes sense because you can vomit it turn 1 with instant fusion or E-Telly. So, great card in this deck specifically. It's kind of like this deck's like Christia in certain matchups. Really solid stuff. Congrats to Oddity. Undefeated in Swiss that's no easy feat. That to me is more impressive than like the top 8 run itself. But yes, all right, moving on. Second place, we got Diego. Peanut. Also on double Swap Frog, not playing the full 3. He's got a heavier focus on the hero engine with double E-Call, playing the same number of heroes as Tim was. He's got the 10 frogs, the 10 non-frogs, the 10 spell cards, and then the 10 defensive cards. Very, very unique deck list here. Definitely not as similar as the other ones because of this 10 defensive cards set up here. Very modern style layout, very modern style deck building. He just said, yeah, I want a quarter of my deck to be defense. I want a quarter of my deck to be payoff spells or searching. And then I want 20 cards to be engine. And I mean, it just cooked. He did really well. Made it all the way to second place. He had a tough one in the finals. The sideboard is where things are also a little bit different. He's not playing DD Crow at all. I wonder if that's just because he has such a high density of defensive trap cards. I know there are a lot of players who have been moving more towards heavy defense in Hero Frogs, particularly players like 10FD, who has won an RBET in the past, and a couple other people have had some success with the heavy defense. My biggest issue with it, and this is kind of like my gripe with playing such a heavy Frog engine in general, is like, okay, you have all this defense, right? You have all this heavy defense, and then you have this 10-card Frog engine. But if you ever want to set one of these and then don't want to use it, then you're not making use of your 10-card Frog engine at all. So basically you have 10 dead cards if you keep a trap card in the back row. So you're forced to activate every single trap card the second you play it, or else you don't get your Treeborn increment. And that definitely adds up. It kind of makes the deck weaker overall because you're just not maximizing the deck slots. Like, you're not making the most of your Frog engine, basically. And then similarly, you're not really making the most of your Frog engine because you don't get to play enough Monarchs. But obviously, my mild complaint with like the structure of this deck doesn't fucking matter because he made it all the way to second place. So there's definitely merit to it. I think that it's very interesting. It's an intelligent deck building decision. It shores up a lot of weaknesses that the deck had, particularly just getting Rush OTK'd, particularly Royal Oppression. He has so many outs Royal Oppression, 6, I believe. Heavy Storm, Space Typhoon, and then the 4 discard traps. And then in the sideboard, he has even more outs to Royal Oppression. So, really solid stuff. Breaker, an interesting sideboard choice, probably for Mask of Restrict. Mind Crush, being able to name specific cards. Just a lot of 1-ofs in the sideboard. A random Smashing Ground, probably for Vanities or Fossil Dinos. Just solid stuff. Really solid stuff to Diego. And then, of course, first place deck list, we got OG99. Shout out to Diego, by the way. Really, really consistent player. Always grinding, you know the vibes. We got OG99 with Vayu Turbo. Kind of a throwback to a couple of different Vayu Turbo lists. There's some main deck decisions here that are very interesting. One of them is the deck dev over the Charge of Light Brigade. Electing not to play Charge of Light Brigade, electing to play Deck Devastation Virus. Interesting. I wonder if it mattered for him main decking that card. That card is like I think it's like one of those cards that Value Turbo gets free wins off of, and it's part of the reason this deck is at the success that it's at, because otherwise, certain decks that are good against this deck naturally would just have like, a field day against it. But because of that deck devastation virus, some decks like Frogs, sometimes deck dev can matter versus Frogs. It ended up being kind of silly. It almost lost him the finals when he deck dev'd versus Diego and then hit nothing except a Treeborn Frog and then just proceeded to fall apart, but probably sided it out in game 2 or game 3 or whatever. It's one of those cards that versus specifically I think Quick Draw and Dragon Turbo, which are two of the like really bad matchups for Value Turbo. Having it in the main can really shift the tides into your favor. So I like this main deck inclusion. I think it's cool. Return from the Different Dimension, now a staple in Value Turbo decks, makes sense. It's just a free win card. No Chaos Sorcerer without charge makes sense. You don't see your lights as consistently. But yeah, no, good stuff. He's got the Reaper in the main, the 10FD Classic. A lot of 10FD's innovations have made it into these top 8s. I think that guy's onto something. I think he's cooking. That guy's he's a strong deck builder for sure. A lot of innovation in that guy's brain. I would love to see his take on the 9th place list, which is the bonus list I'm going to show you. Sideboard is straightforward. All the best cards in Edison format. No Mask of Restrict because you don't want to shut off your own Caiuses. Makes sense. He's got a metric fuck ton of cards for Frogs, the 2DD Crows, the 2 Dynas, the Vortex. He's got the Deck Dev, the Mind Crush, which can come in versus Frogs, double Pulling the Rug, and Royal Oppression. So definitely recognize that his weakness was Frogs, and it paid off for him in top 8. He beat Roundhook in top 8, and he beat Diego in the finals, so he beat 2 Frog players thanks to his MMF-style sideboard of I am not losing to Frogs today, and that is exactly what happened. He played against 2 Frogs, and he beat 2 Frogs. All right, the 9th place list, the list that everyone clicked on this video for, Galaxia's Valhalla Fairy list. Everyone wanted to see this. Galaxia went 6-2 in Swiss and made it to 9th place. Both of his matches on camera were his losses. And I would, maybe this is just cope, but definitely if you rewatch those matches, there were lines of play which could have led them to be wins. So couple of different plays, and this is your undefeated deck list at RBET1 this season. So food for thought, the fact that this deck could go undefeated. Maybe some people are sleeping. Anyway, really strong deck list. A lot of interesting innovation. The big one is Guardian Iatos. So the way he utilizes Guardian Iatos is turn 1 is just a 2500 beater. Answer this or you lose in 2 turns or whatever. Also, it can become tribute fodder for Tethius if you don't have Valhalla. So let's say you don't open up with Valhalla, but you do open up with Tethius and Guardian Iatos. Unlike other builds of Valhalla, like builds that I've played on the channel before, that play with stuff like Splendid Venus, if you don't have Valhalla, you can still just summon Iatos, and you can either leave it there as a beater, or you can use it as tribute fodder for Tethius to get your combo online as early as turn 1. So it's an additional combo piece turn 1. It's an out to Kawakimaru Drago, which can completely hose other versions of this deck that play all light monsters. Either you can special it by its own effect or by Valhalla to run over the Drago. It's just another fairy, so you can always pitch it to Herald of Orange, and it's a good hit off of Tethius. You can empty your graveyard with Soul of Purity and Light or Call of the Haunted and special it in the earlier turns of the game, even after you've played a couple of plays. A lot of other interesting choices in this deck. The main deck, Consecrated Light, giving you that random cheese versus Blackwings. I do like Consecrated Light a lot more when you have Royal Decree. I am definitely going to be testing versions of this deck both with and without Royal Decree in the coming future. Just because I think Royal Decree would help short up, and it could possibly get you lower to like 40 cards. I think 42 cards is not that big of a difference from 40 cards, but it is interesting. It is interesting that he decided to play 42. I wonder why he elected to play specifically this exact number. Maybe he wanted these ratios of trap cards to spell cards to fairy monsters or something like that. He was like, I need 26 fairies and 42 cards or something. He ran the hyper geometric whatever. It's very possible that that's the case. I don't even know. The sideboard, very interesting, kind of emulant of some of the sideboards I've used in fairies. With the double knock and the mind control, this is the pro storm ratio of guaranteeing you'll see knock on turn 1 as consistently as possible without bricking on multiples. And then, of course, the double breaker to help with Lightmare, double Thunder King to help with Lightsworn or other decks that are looking to special summon. And then just like some solid trap cards, Solemn Judgment in the side definitely can come in and help you stick your Tethius and resolve that powerful Tethius draw effect. We saw him on camera activate a Legacy of Yata Grassi with Tethius and play and draw 5 cards. That is a ridiculous thing to do, Very few decks in the format can boast that. Only Dragon Turbo so far is a deck that we have seen have that type of combo potential. So definitely a deck if you wanna pick up your Tetheuses now. I mean, one different play and this is getting bought out. You know what I mean? Very cool deck. I loved the way he was playing it too. He would use the Shining Angels to bait back row, and then main phase 2 he would be like, all right, Valhalla special Tetheus, and the back row already got baited, and it's like, well, now what? You have to answer this Tetheus. You're down cards because we've traded, and then you've got this huge monster in low resource situation, which is really insane, and it can just reload your entire hand immediately if it gets a chance to resolve. So really cool stuff. Congratulations to all these players, especially to OG99 on his victory with Vayu Turbo. Very based, very strong player. I liked a lot of the plays that I was seeing from him. In a lot of the matchups, he was expertly playing around his opponent's back row. He was reading stuff that it just showcasing his skill and his he deserved to win this tournament for sure. Definitely by watching his play, he was activated on a different level. But shout out to all the players who participated in RBET, and if you guys want to participate in this as well, once again, March 23rd, tune in for that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.